All right, what's going on, guys? If I were to show you guys today's Eastern Conference standings like a month ago, you guys probably would look at it and be like, what kind of sick prank is this? Because as of right now, the Eastern Conference is just completely on its head. You have teams that we thought were going to compete for championships this year sitting at the bottom of the conference. And then we have teams just a couple years ago who were the laughingstock of the NBA now are sitting at the top of the conference looking unbeatable. But before we get into this video, if you guys enjoy this type of content, please make sure to smash that like button. And if you guys want to see more content like this, all things NBA, all NBA content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you guys. And make sure to comment down below who's been your favorite team to watch in the Eastern Conference this year and why. I respond to every comment. One thing you guys will learn about me is I just love to talk about all things basketball. And so any sort of comments, I love to read them. I love to engage with them. I love to see what other NBA fans are thinking and just talk basketball with you guys. But with that spiel out of the way, let's get into the actual video and let's talk about the Detroit Pistons. Now, I apologize for this, but I'm going to go into fan mode just for a quick second, and then I'm going to hop back into YouTuber, commentator, analyst mode. All right, sorry about that. As of when I'm recording this, November 13th, 2025, the Detroit Pistons sit at the top of the Eastern Conference at 10-2. I don't think many people were expecting this, excluding me, and I'll tell you why. Because everything I read in the offseason was the Pistons were going to be a little bit worse than they were last year. I saw a lot of projections that said they were going to be like a play-in tournament team, anywhere from like the 8th to the 10th seed. And that was mostly due to the loss of Malik Beasley with the whole gambling thing, as well as losing some pretty key pieces that helped us make the playoffs last year, and Dennis Schroeder and Tim Hardaway Jr. And while we brought in guys like LeVert and like Duncan Robinson, the general NBA public, I got the sense, viewed those signings as more of downgrades instead of upgrades. Now, you guys can call me biased or hopeful or whatever it is, but I never saw the Pistons being worse than they were last year by the end of this season. And it was simply down to one thing. And I think this is a good lesson for the general NBA public to see. And that lesson is that internal development is king. Now, yes, the Pistons did not make a splash in free agency like some fans were wanting to. Pessimistic fans said, wow, our first good season in a long time, and we're already regressing. We're already getting worse again. We're going back to the old Pistons. But in my mind, I always knew this team was going to be just as good or better than they were last year. And that simply comes down to the amount of young, developing players they have on their team. In Cade, Asar, Duren, Ivy, Ron Holland, Beef Stew. These are all guys who are not in their prime yet. And when you have a bunch of young guys who aren't in their prime yet, that means they can get better from season to season. I had a feeling that all they needed were just 2 or 3 of those guys that I listed to take another step in their production, in their basketball skills, in their stats. And the Pistons were going to be a very dangerous team. And it seems like that's exactly what's happening. Cade Cunningham took a huge step last year and is now taking another huge step into becoming an NBA superstar. A couple games ago, he put up a 45-point triple-double. Don't look at the shooting splits. And is also becoming that guy in the second half and the fourth quarter in his last couple games before that. Now, I hate to admit this, but during the Pistons' 14-win seasons 2 years ago, I watched every single game. I know it was horrible going in every night expecting the Pistons to maybe squeeze out a W this one time, and they never were doing it. But the main thing I noticed that year with the Pistons was they never had a guy in the fourth quarter to seal the deal for them. There were so many games that the Pistons played that year where they kept with them for 3 quarters and 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. And then in those final 4 minutes, they just fell apart. And that's when every other team cemented a lead and won the game. But it finally looks like Cade in his 5th year is finally comfortable being that guy in the 4th quarter that the Pistons can go to on every possession and expect a bucket more times than not. You can't talk about Cade unless you talk about his boy Duren. Now, a big thing for Pistons fans this offseason was they need to find a second star. And so that's what they were kind of hoping to do in free agency, whether it's a signing or a trade. And it just didn't happen. And I know a lot of people were hoping it was going to be Jaden Ivey when he was drafted. And in the last couple of years with all the injury issues, the focus kind of shifted to Ausar. But turns out it was somebody that not very many people expected, and that's Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren is taking a crazy leap this year in production. Basically, at this point, a walking 20 and 10 guy, night in and night out, on elite efficiency. And while I do think he is a very skilled big man and has developed amazingly, some of that credit also goes to he's playing with Cade. Him and Cade are becoming this generation's Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire. Just a big man point guard duo that is on the same page at all times. I mean, if you watch them, it is a case of just two players who know each other's games inside and out, know exactly where they're going to be on the court at all times, and can find each other when they're open, and they just complement each other's games beautifully. It kind of reminds me of some other Pistons point guard big man duo, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Seems like finally the Pistons have found their bona fide second option in Jalen Duren. I think it's finally showing fans that yes, going out and trading for stars and signing stars is very flashy and everybody loves to see that. But the real king of the NBA is your internal young development. So then you just kind of go down and you see the Cavs sitting in the 2 seed, the Knicks sitting in the 3 seed. Nothing really surprising there. But then I just see a string of teams where I sit there and I'm kind of like, oh wow, some of these guys I didn't expect to even be in the playoff picture right now. And let's start with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, they had an incredibly disappointing year last year. And so I think that kind of caused a lot of fans, including me, to kind of sleep on the Sixers. I didn't think the Sixers were going to be in the playoff picture. I kind of saw them as like a 10th seed, maybe an 11th seed. I mean, let's get it out of the way. Tyrese Maxey is having a season right now. Last year, I think a lot of people kind of turned their heads on him. He kind of fell out of the top guard conversations in the East, but he's averaging like 34 points right now, night in and night out for this squad. It seemed like maybe last year with Joel Embiid's injury, Maxey wasn't quite ready to be the number one guy for the squad, and now it finally looks like he's like, all right, Embiid, you know, he's had his injury troubles, he's on the decline, this is my team now. And then let's talk about Embiid. While he's back in a limited fashion, and yes, his knees are held together by paper mache and a dream, he's still no slouch. He's not what he used to be, but when he's healthy, he's still a serviceable NBA center. And so getting him back, even in a limited fashion, has been really good for the 76ers. Not to mention the absolute home run out of the park pick that was VJ Edgecombe. VJ Edgecombe looks special. When the Pistons played the 76ers a couple nights ago, there were points in the game where I saw VJ Edgecombe take it to some of these players like he was a grown-ass man. And if I were to know nothing about basketball and I were to watch him play, I would have thought he was a seasoned veteran. Just a guy who has no fear out there and just doesn't care that he's a rookie. He's going to take it to you every single night. And I think the 76ers did a great job with that pick. And I think VJ Edgecombe is going to be a great player in this league. Next, you have the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm not surprised that the Atlanta Hawks are sitting at a 7-5 record right now in the 5th seed. The thing that I'm surprised about is where they were just like a week and a half ago compared to where they are now. The Hawks were a team that everybody thought was going to be like a top seed in the East with their acquisitions in Nah and in Tingus Pingus. And so it was very surprising for them to start the year 3-4. And originally when I was going to make this video, they were going to be in the disappointment section of this video. But here's the real kicker is ever since Trae Young has gone down with an injury, The Hawks are now, I believe, 6-2 without him. And so that's kind of an interesting thing to see for a team who Trae Young was looked at as the main focal point on this team. But this is what I'm talking about. Like, the Eastern Conference has been so crazy because the Hawks can start the year so disappointing, and now they're up to the 5th seed in the East, sitting at 7-5. And another team that I just can't believe are the Miami Heat, sitting also at 7-5, tied with the Hawks. The entire time this offseason, the common NBA sentiment was the Heat need to blow it up. They just lost Jimmy last year. This team isn't going to be able to compete. Get rid of Bam, get rid of Hero, just start all over. This generation, this phase of Miami Heat basketball is over. But no, dude, the Miami Heat look really good right now. Bam Adebayo still is struggling with his efficiency, in my opinion, in some games. Just doesn't quite know what his game is, in my opinion. He stretches the floor out a little too much than I think warrants his skill level, but still is a solid center for the Heat. The acquisition of Norman Powell was huge for the Heat. Basically got him for nothing and has been one of the key factors of the team's success so far this season. And now you're looking at a team that in the offseason everybody said was dead in the water, but is now in a playoff position in the East. And yes, there's a lot of season left, but the Heat look so much better than what I've heard anybody say so far. And then the last team that is surprising me is the Milwaukee Bucks, who's sitting at 7-5 as well. Now, I think most of that is just simply due to Giannis's dominance. Giannis pretty much had a clear idea in his head that he was going to have to come in and basically put this team on his back to get them to where he wants them to go. And he's pretty much doing it. But that's not discounting another guy who I think has shouldered some of the load from the loss of Damian Lillard, and that's Ryan Rollins. I believe Ryan Rollins should be in the conversation for most improved player. This was a guy who literally nobody had heard of last season, who is now becoming a great point guard for the Bucks. And I think they need it because one guy who's been so disappointing is Miles Turner. Miles Turner was the one hope I had for the Bucks to be the guy to shoulder the load when they lost Dame. And man, he has been really disappointing this year, like really disappointing. I don't know what happened. But then that also makes it a little bit scary because just one season ago, he was on the Pacers competing for an NBA championship. And so if the Bucks can get that version of Miles Turner back, this team then becomes incredibly scary in the East. And time will tell if that's going to happen. Now, similarly to how I said we have teams that nobody thought were going to be good now at the top of the Eastern Conference, we also have some teams that everybody thought were going to be elite sitting as bottom feeders in the conference. And I think the one team that everybody is so surprised with are the Orlando Magic, sitting at 6-6 right now. Now, for the last 2 seasons, the story for the Magic has been an elite defensive team with a garbage offensive game. And so with the acquisition of Desmond Bane, everybody thought, here we go. This team is now going to be elite. I saw people putting them at the 1 seed, 2 seed as teams in the East. And so far sitting at the 10 seed, and just a week ago sitting even lower. They finally started to win a couple more games, but just a week and a half ago, they were even worse in the Eastern Conference. I think that comes down to a couple of factors. The first one we have is coaching. Jamal Mosley is a great defensive coach, but just like Tom Thibodeau, just looks like he has no idea how to run a competent NBA offense. You have your second best player, some would argue your best player over Paolo, in Franz Wagner, being like the 5th most used player on the team in some situations. How is it that one of your best players is the 5th most used player in certain fourth quarters in games? Another one is their acquisition of Desmond Bane, the guy that everyone thought was going to bring them over the hump, being incredibly disappointing to start the season so far. And the scary thing there is they gave up a ton of picks to the Grizzlies for Desmond Bane. And so they now don't really have much draft capital or capital in general to try and make moves to make themselves better. And so this Magic team could be the best Magic squad we see without them getting rid of key established guys that have already been on the team for a long time. And so I'm very worried for the Magic because I believe that if they can't make something happen this season after bringing in Desmond Bane, the guy that was supposed to put them over the edge, I think management is going to start looking at the already established guys on the team as issues. And so the Magic are in a very interesting situation. And in my opinion, it's a very do or die situation for them this season. Because it's been the same old story these last like 2 or 3 years where on paper, everybody thinks the Magic is going to be this elite team, and every year they just disappoint completely. And then the last team that I want to talk about that's just blowing my mind are the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers right now are almost in dead last of the conference, sitting at 1-10 right now on the year. This was a team who last year was in a Game 7 to win the NBA Finals and are now at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And I think a lot of people knew they weren't going to be as good as last year with the loss of Turner and the injury of Halliburton, but I don't think a lot of people expected them to be this bad. Ultimately, what I think it comes down to is the Pacers had a choice this year. They could either compete the best they could and maybe get a play-in spot and maybe win a playoff game, or they could just commit to the tank. They lost their starting center. They lost their star point guard to injury. Let's take a year off. Let's try and get a top draft pick. And then let's go into next season competing once again. And it seems like the Pacers have taken that second option. The scary thing is, though, is how the lottery works now. You're not always guaranteed a top pick. You know, Pacers could be one of the worst teams in the league and end up with the 6th, 7th, 8th pick because that's just how the lottery works. And then you miss out on those 3 guys that everybody's talking about with Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, and AJ Devanza. And at that point, that's a failure of a season. It's just so surprising to me that the Pacers have fallen as much as they have. And I think it's a testament to maybe how good Halliburton made this Pacers team. A lot of people called him a system player last year. You know, he's just good in this Pacers system. But I think this is starting to put people on notice that maybe Halliburton's impact was more than they thought initially. But honestly, this video could be obsolete in 2 weeks when major shifts happen in the Eastern Conference again, because that's just how it's gone this season. 1 week a team is amazing, the next week they suck. But yeah, I mean, tons of season left. We'll see what happens. Again, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button. And if you guys want to see more content like this video and like all my shorts and all the videos that I make, please make sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you. And lastly, you know, comment down below who's your favorite Eastern Conference team right now and why. I read and reply to every comment. I would love to just talk basketball with anyone who wants to. But yeah, with that being said, as always, peace and love, guys.